Amy Coney Barrett, a name that resonates powerfully within the legal and political landscape of the United States, is widely recognized for her sharp intellect, deep understanding of constitutional law, and her position as an Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. When someone steps forward to challenge her in a legal or intellectual setting, they are not just engaging in an ordinary debate or discussion. They are stepping into the arena with a figure whose experience spans years of rigorous academic work, courtroom practice, and judicial decision-making at the highest level. The challenge against Amy Coney Barrett was, in many ways, both daring and intriguing. It wasn't simply about disagreeing with her opinion. It was about attempting to out-argue, outthink, or expose a flaw in the reasoning of one of the most scrutinized and respected justices currently on the bench. The moment was set in an environment where stakes were high and every second mattered, a setting where precision, confidence, and preparation determined whether one's arguments would stand or collapse. The challenger entered the discussion believing she had the upper hand. There was a confidence in her demeanor that suggested she believed she had spotted a weakness, perhaps a gap in logic, like constitutional interpretation open to attack, or an inconsistency in prior statements. This confidence is not unusual in legal settings. In fact, it is often necessary for anyone who wants to effectively engage in debate. However, when the opponent is someone like Amy Coney Barrett, confidence alone is insufficient. The justice's track record demonstrates not only her legal expertise, but her ability to quickly assess the heart of an argument, identify its vulnerabilities, and respond with clarity that leaves little room for misinterpretation. This is what made the challenge particularly fascinating. It wasn't just about the content of the argument, but about the dynamics of two minds meeting under pressure, one aiming to disprove or outmaneuver the other. In the moments leading up to the exchange, there was a palpable sense of anticipation. Those who were aware of Barrett's style knew she was not prone to emotional overreaction, nor was she easily rattled. Her responses, whether in oral arguments or public discussions, tend to be methodical and deeply rooted in legal reasoning. The challenger, however, seemed to believe she could provoke or corner her, perhaps catching her off guard with a sharp line of questioning or a surprising piece of evidence. In a way, this approach can be a high-risk, high-reward strategy. If successful, it can make the challenger appear exceptionally insightful. If unsuccessful, it risks highlighting the strength and composure of the person being challenged. What makes this particular challenge noteworthy is the fact that it was initiated in an environment where Amy Coney Barrett was in her element, a structured, rule-bound setting that rewarded logical clarity over rhetorical flair. For someone to beat her in such a space would require not just knowledge, but the ability to think at her pace, anticipate her counterpoints, and remain calm under the pressure of her precise question. This is a challenge even seasoned legal professionals might hesitate to accept without thorough preparation. The challenger's decision to move forward suggested either a deep confidence in her own argument, or a miscalculation of the justice's ability to dismantle it quickly. The first moments of the exchange revealed the challenger's strategy. She came forward with a bold statement, a direct critique of Barrett's reasoning on a particular legal principle. Her tone carried authority, kind that is meant to establish dominance early in the conversation. This is a common tactic. By projecting confidence immediately, one hopes to influence the perception of the audience and possibly even unsettle the opponent. The room's attention was fixed on the interaction, each person waiting to see if Barrett would pause, recalibrate, or show any sign of being caught off guard. But Barrett's reaction was steady, her expression unchanged as she listened intently. She absorbed the statement fully before responding, giving no indication of being rushed or pressured. The essence of the challenge lay in the belief that Barrett's position could be undermined by a clever framing of the facts or by pointing out an interpretative inconsistency. It was a test of both substance and speed, whether the challenger could land a meaningful point before Barrett dissected it. In a debate with such a figure, every second counts, and the margin for error is razor thin. The exchange was not just about legal theories. It was a display of mental agility, rhetorical discipline, and the ability to maintain composure while one's argument is being put under intense scrutiny. The challenger seemed convinced that this was her moment to demonstrate superiority. Perhaps she believed her point was airtight, or that Barrett's own prior words could be turned against her in a way that left little room for rebuttal. This confidence radiated not only in her words, but in her body language, the upright posture, the steady eye contact, the controlled but assertive tone. All of these elements signaled that she was prepared for victory, ready to prove that she could stand toe-to-toe with one of the most formidable legal minds in the nation. What she may not have fully anticipated, however, was the speed and precision with which Barrett could dismantle an argument, taking it apart point by point, without raising her voice or breaking her calm demeanor. By stepping into this challenge, the woman was engaging in more than just a debate. She was entering a psychological contest, one where control of the narrative was as important as the validity of the claims themselves. Every word mattered. Every pause could signal uncertainty or confidence. And in that setting, the challenger had to balance her determination to press the attack with the need to respond effectively to counter-arguments that could come at any moment. The challenge against Amy Coney Barrett was therefore not only a legal confrontation, but a test of composure, strategic thinking, and the ability to adapt instantly under pressure. A contest where one's strengths and weaknesses were inevitably laid bare in real time. The rapid 36-second turning point began the moment Amy Coney Barrett opened her mouth to respond. Until that instant, the challenger still held on to the belief that she could press her advantage, that her framing of the question or critique had placed Barrett in a position where she would need to scramble to defend herself. But Barrett's approach to these situations is anything but reactive in the traditional sense. She does not rush to fill silence with half-formed thoughts, nor does she allow the pressure of the moment to dictate the pace of her response. Instead, she listens, processes, and then answers in a manner that feels both deliberate and unflinching. This calm, measured style meant that her reply carried a weight far beyond its breadth. Within just a few seconds, it became evident that the balance of power in the exchange had shifted entirely. The first few words Barrett spoke were not dramatic or emotional. She began by isolating the core premise of the challenger's argument, stripping away the rhetorical flourishes and auxiliary points that had been presented. In doing so, she effectively reduced the debate to its most fundamental question, a tactic that immediately placed her in control. The challenger may have expected a rebuttal filled with counterexamples or defensive justification, but Barrett's choice to focus on the essential point meant there was nowhere to hide. Identifying this central flaw directly, she set the stage for a rapid dismantling of the entire argument. From that point forward, her tone remained steady, her pacing controlled, but her reasoning was delivered with the kind of precision that leaves little room for escape. She drew on well-established legal principles and precedents, referencing them not as a barrage of citations, but as an integrated logical framework that supported her position from multiple angles. Every sentence seemed to lock another piece of the puzzle into place, closing off potential avenues the challenger might have used to pivot or reframe the discussion. The challenger's earlier confidence began to lose some of its edge, and subtle cues in her body language suggested she was beginning to realize that the moment was slipping away faster than she could recover. Barrett's method in this exchange was notable for its efficiency. She did not waste time on irrelevant tangents, nor did she offer more explanation than was necessary. Each point built directly on the last, creating a sense of inevitability in her argument's progression. For an audience watching, the effect was striking. It wasn't simply that Barrett was winning the exchange, it was that she was doing so with such clarity and speed that it became impossible to mistake the outcome. In less than a minute, the challenger had gone from pressing an attack to standing in a defensive posture, responding to points that were both unanswerable and tightly bound to the very foundation of her own claim. As the seconds ticked by, the psychological dimension of the turning point became even more apparent. Barrett's calmness served as a stark contrast to the challenger's shifting expressions and the slight quickening of her speech. When someone realizes their argument is unraveling in real time, the instinct is often to push harder, to speak faster, to regain lost ground by sheer force of will. But against Barrett's unshakable composure, such tactics only highlighted the imbalance. Her demeanor projected control, which in turn influenced how her words were perceived by everyone in the room. Confidence in an argument can be as persuasive as the facts themselves, and in this case, Barrett had both. The tipping point of the 36-second window came when Barrett exposed a contradiction in the challenger's reasoning. She did this not by attacking the challenger personally or dismissing her outright, but by guiding the argument to a place where the challenger's earlier statements could not coexist without undermining each other. It was a subtle but devastating maneuver, the kind of rhetorical precision that is often more effective than overt confrontation. By using the challenger's own words as the linchpin of her rebuttal, Barrett ensured that the conclusion was inescapable. Once the contradiction was made explicit, the remaining steps of her argument flowed naturally, closing the loop and leaving no loose ends. Oh, the speed of the reversal was what made the moment so remarkable. 36 seconds is not a long time, yet within that brief span, the entire dynamic of the exchange transformed. It was a textbook example of how expertise and preparation can compress what might otherwise be a lengthy debate into a concise, decisive moment. There was no need for extended back and forth or drawn-out persuasion. The essential work was done in the clarity of Barrett's initial framing, the precision of her reasoning, and the efficiency with which she eliminated counter-arguments before they could even be voiced. For those observing, the sequence felt almost surgical in its execution. Each statement from Barrett had a clear purpose, each transition between points was seamless, and each reference to legal principle or precedent was perfectly timed to support the momentum she was building. The challenger, who had begun the interaction projecting confidence and authority, now appeared to be responding more than initiating. A subtle shift that is easy to miss in the moment but obvious in hindsight.